Perfect, okie doke. So we'll start just now. Thanks everyone for joining. If you have any questions, just pop them in the chat and we will try and answer them throughout the Q&A. First, I'd like to introduce our panel of experts, which is Matt Ogden, our product manager, Andy Reid, our technical manager, and our senior sales manager, Grant Stock. So before we kick off, we're just going to show you our little animation video. Matt will give you a brief introduction about the RCG cable gland, and then we can get on to answering your questions. So over to you, Matt.
Perfect. Hope everybody can see the screen. It's flipped over to a presentation slide. I'm just going to start playing that video now. Okay, thanks very much for watching that. So, I want to kind of kick off by giving you a high-level overview of the Fibre One RCG product range. RCG stands for Rapid Connection Gland. It's a completely new concept in the EX market, which we hope will revolutionise the way that cable terminations occur in the field and give many more options, giving versatility to the way that we interface with products. So the Fibre One RCG combines the key features of our cable glands, as well as giving the plug and play benefits of a connector. The whole development of this product was born with our sister companies in mind. Obviously many products being or utilising cable gland type products, but there are many other products and type of applications that could utilise this particular product that we're launching today, or we're bringing to market today. As well as different levels of supply chain, we're able to offer value added. They're able to offer extra services by potentially offering technical expertise and offering wire applications as well with their equipment that they're supplying to their customers. So we have two options available. The first being the Fibre One RCG cable gland type product, and this features 7 main key components, 6 of which form the body part of the product, what we're calling the body. 4 of them parts are standard cable gland components. So very much familiar with the way that installers obviously utilize our product already. That we're very familiar with the installation method of them. And then the final component in this particular RCG cable gland style product is the entry, which is fitted with the insert. That's a single component that is thread mounted onto the equipment. The cable gland offers an opportunity to be able to decouple the actual cable gland product itself. So it gives a much faster method of installation, potentially reducing maintenance, inspection, and installation time, which effectively reduces your CapEx, your OpEx costs. Moving on to the 501 RCG coupler style product. This is a cable-to-cable termination product and allows for cable extensions as well as potentially replacing some of the EX equipment that you may have on site, such as traditional type junction boxes. This is made up of a number of parts. The two parts either side are essentially the same as the body that you find in the cable gland style product that we showed on the previous slide, as well as the internal coupler housing that houses the insert tube where the pins are located. These then plug together an interface within that tube and giving you a plug and play style solution for either side of the cable. So just moving on to some of the specs of the product. I'll just drop this presentation. So yeah, just moving on to some of the specs of the product. It is a EXE certified Zone 1 product that's obviously can be used on Zone 1 certified equipment. It has a 300 volt AC rating as well as a 212 DC. And the amp rating is determined by the core size, which is something that we're going to touch on in a couple of questions time on how that is, how we went through the testing, how we've managed to certify the product, and how that relates to the amp rating relates to the core size. It's suitable for anything from 0.75 to 6 square mil in conductor size and has an IP66, 67 and also a DTS01 rating on there. It's available in two different sizes. We have a 4-way and a 6-way. The 4-way, when it's equipment mounted, comes with an M20 entry, and the 6-way, when it's equipment mounted, comes with an M25 entry, and it has a maximum temperature of -60 or operating temperature of -60 to +60. So just kind of wanted to give you a general overview of the product itself, kind of give you some key specs, and obviously we'll be delving a little bit deeper as we move on through the questions that we're gonna present today.
Perfect.
Anything
So that leads us on to our first question, which is, why is this product described as a cable gland and not a connector?
So I can take that one. I think in order to understand why I've called this a cable gland, you've got to take a step back and think about what our intention is with this product. You might think it's got pins and sockets inside, so therefore it's a connector. But that's not the case. This product has been designed down to a cost, and it doesn't have some of the features that you might traditionally associate with a connector. It's got no live dematability. It's not got EXD protection concept. The actual installation process of this product is much more akin to a cable gland than it is to a connector. A connector is two halves that you screw together and bang, they're installed. This has more of a cable gland-like installation where you take in a middle nut component and tightening it into an entry, and then a back nut and tightening it into a middle nut. So you have to think of it more as an installation on site, as a semi-permanent installation, similar to a cable gland, as opposed to a connector. So then the next question is then, well, why have we taken those features out of it? And we're just trying to look to provide the ability to disconnect or connect equipment on site without having to open the equipment up or without having to strip cable and make hardwired terminations into the equipment on site. So that then gives you the ability to move the labor costs around, to do operations such as cable stripping and armor stripping in a factory environment. You can terminate the entry portion of the RCG into equipment in a factory, and then when you come into more expensive offshore environment where labor costs more, the actual operations that you're undertaking to install it are vastly reduced.
Yeah, I think I'd like to just mention there about the difference between this and a connector. From my point of view, obviously Hawke manufacture a vast range of different connectors across a vast majority of different size conductors, and all of our connectors, when assembled, are finished products on the end of a cable. They are terminated in a way that once it's terminated on the end of the cable, there is no further action necessary apart from coupling two halves together. With the RCG, it is very much more kind of that process happens, that the completion process of the assembly happens after the two halves have been mated together. So as Andy mentioned, it's a specific tightening process that has to take place, which follows much more the style of a cable gland than a connector does, which is why we've gone down a cable gland style product.
So thanks for that, Matt. We've also got a question in the chat, which is, what is the difference between this cable gland and the universal type cable gland?
So there are some similarities. The armour clamping method and the backnut seal are identical between the two. So as Matt mentioned before, we've brought known technology that works well in the field from our cable glands and put them into this product. The difference with the RCG is it does have internal pins and sockets, and it therefore gives you the ability to disconnect at the point where the entry is mounted into the equipment. The cable gland, conversely, is hardwired into the equipment. So in order to decouple, you've got to open your equipment up and actually disconnect the cable from the terminals. You should be aware of protection concept differences as well. So just to reiterate, the RCG is EXE only, whereas the universal is also EXD approved.
I think that whole, moving to EXE only means that we remove the internal sealing effect. So whether you're sealing on the inner sheath or you're sealing on the individual cores, that's not necessarily necessary for an EXE type product. So by removing that, we're then in place of that seal, we're putting these pins and sockets to interface with the connections that are potentially made outside of the equipment. We're moving the point in which the connections that were traditionally internal to a piece of equipment to the external wall of that equipment, so you can interface with the RCG. So yeah, by removing that internal seal and the fact that we've gone down the EXE route gives us the ability to do that.
Perfect, okey-doke. So that brings us on to our next question, which is, how does this product create opportunity for sealed for life products?
So I think that comes back to the point that Matt just made, where in effect what the RCG is doing is it's bringing the terminals from inside the equipment to an access point on the outside of the equipment. So therefore that means if you're looking at utilising seal for life products, which have quite significant benefits in terms of maintenance and installation, this product gives you that ability. You can install the entry side of it in a factory, and the entry does maintain ingress into the enclosure. So you know that your enclosure or your equipment is now going to be sealed for life and IP rated, never going to be opened up out in the field. And in order to install it on site, all you're doing is coupling up the body side of the RCG into the entry, and it's all done externally to the equipment.
Great, okey-doke. So that brings us on to the application. So what would be the typical applications that can be used for the RCG?
I'll pick that one up. So I think it's kind of leading on from what Andy was saying there. I think one of the big things that we're seeing, certainly at the moment, is with the energy transition. People are looking at how they reduce power, how they reduce their maintenance offshore. And obviously a sealed for life luminaire can really benefit that. When you look at what we're achieving now versus conventional lighting, you're saving upwards of 50% in power. But not only that, you're able to take a lot of that installation work onshore, or even to a workshop or wherever that might be on the bench. So you're really reducing that sort of maintenance cost. That work can be done at ground level rather than be it a scaffold or be it height through rope access. So there's a lot of benefits to that, and that's something that I'm myself and the team around the world are really seeing now. When you look at looking at power from land, or maybe through wind generation of power. Obviously before, a lot of this, certainly if you look at oil and gas, you're generating that power through diesel generation. And obviously that's quite dirty. So now this gives a real big benefit to that. But I think one of the exciting things has been with the RCG, as we've kind of, over the last year, as we've kind of spoken, done a bit of voice of customer, we've had really customers come to us with features and benefits that probably we didn't think about. And if you look at like the instrument market, we've got customers who are looking at utilizing the product for, say, wash down areas. So they might have an area that needs to be washed down on a regular basis. That instrument might not have a sufficient IP rating, so they were having to go in, into the product itself, into the terminals, disengage that, and then reinstall it. Whereas now they've really much got obviously power down, but a plug and play. You're not having to interfere with that. And it just gives you that real quick access to it. We're seeing it as well on like some junction box market. If you've got an installation that, it might be time prohibited in terms of in the zone, or if you've got something maybe where you've got potential for sand getting inside the GB itself, you can do a lot of that pre-wired, a junction box coming out of your factory, out your facility, and all you're really having to, interfere with is the field cable on site. That can be, essentially powered up without having to open the GB. So I think that's where we're seeing, it's an ever-growing list of opportunities. We're seeing refineries looking at using it to get a lot of the skilled work done at their factory or at their base. And then the actual installation on site is really just a fitting a luminaire or fitting a piece of equipment. And the skilled aspect is really taken away, which obviously reduces the cost. So it's ever growing, and I think everyone that we speak to has a different view on it. But I think the minimal maintenance is a massive plus for the customer.
I definitely agree with everything you just said there, Grant. Well, like I said at the top of the presentation, but I think there's benefits across most levels of the supply chain, to be totally honest, as well, where, if distribution have the facility, have, the manpower to be able to offer solutions, so certainly wiring solutions, they could get involved in the whole kind of, specification, certainly from a junction box point of view, pre-wired, shipped to site, finished, don't have to open it, wired to the correct terminals, to a schematic, and then obviously people are coming in just to terminate the body part of the RCG onto the cable, and then obviously interface with the necessary entry that's obviously in a fixed position on the enclosure. I think there's many levels to this that could potentially bring something to market, depending on obviously whereabouts they sit within that supply chain.
Yeah.
As you mentioned about the sand issue, that's a great example with regards to, you don't want to open that junction box in a sandy environment, because as soon as you do, you're getting debris inside of it. If you can mitigate that and remove that problem by effectively speccing the RCG on a pre-terminated piece of equipment, then you're kind of, you're taking away that problem. And again, with water, anywhere where offshore, whatever it may be, you can pre-wire everything onshore in a dry, clean environment, and then obviously take it offshore, where you've then got a much quicker installation method than you've ever had before, without having to spec connectors. And that probably goes back to Andy's previous question, is, connectors are an expensive investment, without doubt. We've been in many discussions with many different operators who have looked to spec connectors, but it's always been cost prohibitive, because the costs in the high cost upfront isn't always realised as to what the benefits could be throughout the life cycle of the product, and over a 25-year, say, lifespan. With this, and again, as Andy mentioned earlier, the reason why we designed it as it is, it helps us to reduce that cost and bring a plug and play products, a cable Gland style product to market that kind of hits all of them key benefits that connectors bring, without having the huge upfront cost. Now, we're not saying that this is replacing connectors, absolutely not, because connectors in some applications are the better product, and will be spec'd because of the specific application that you're looking at. But it does open up a whole new world with where plug and play could be specified, and it's a much easier kind of upfront cost to absorb, and to see the benefits on the back end.
Yeah, I would probably back that up. I think we're seeing this much more as a product which is going to introduce plug and play, where traditionally you've used cable bands. We've had conversations with customers and other manufacturers who have said you know, there are places where they would have liked to use connectors and it just can't make the numbers add up in terms of cost. So I think that's where this product sits nicely. I was also going to mention the coupler product, and to encourage you guys to think about that as a potential replacement for junction boxes. We are limited to 4-way and 6-way, but if you've got a simple junction box, which you've got to, you know, mount onto a wall and it's taking up space, consider the coupler as an alternative, which can be neatly stowed away in a cable tray. It's much more compact and doesn't have any of the ingress issues associated with opening up a junction box on site.
So you kind of mentioned there, Andy, about the coupler, but would this be of use for all types of lighting fixtures?
So I think in principle, yes, the RCG, the 5-1 RCG product, which consists of an entry to body, yes, could certainly be used on lighting products. But the intention would be for the luminaire manufacturers to consider having the entry side factory installed, and that then gives the on-site installer the opportunity to shorten their installation times and just make off the body side and then install that into the luminaire. I don't know if Grant or Matt, you want to expand on that?
I would definitely say so. I mean, as I mentioned at the top, where, you know, we designed this product with our sister companies in mind, and generally they are, you know, we've got a lot of lighting companies within kind of the harsh and hazardous group with regards to their products and the way that they're developing products for the future, and also now products to market will benefit from this product massively. And, you know, take Chalmette for instance with the Protector X, it's a much shorter fitting. You replace that, you'll get a like for like output, but it is a smaller footprint, and we have to look to see how we can remove the challenges that may come about by shorter lengths of cables, and, you know, that may mean that they would have traditionally had to use junction boxes to extend that piece of cable, which, you know, is another piece of equipment on the inspection register. We wanted to create something that allowed for that inline type cable extension application that you would need to meet the different lengths in cables, from substituting a 5-foot fitting for a fitting that's 1.5 foot. Without doubt, that it can be used on other lighting products. I think Grant probably was a little bit more probably to say on that, to be honest. But it would benefit, it potentially benefit any EXE piece of equipment that you have to do any maintenance on, purely from the fact that you don't, as Grant mentioned, you haven't got rope access that may be needed, scaffolding, you know, the personnel that are needed for them type of applications. You know, you have to have at least 2 people on there. If you can get up and get it down as quick as possible, work with it on the bench and then back up again, it means you're limiting the amount of time that you're up in the air, and the speed of working. You're not working overhead. Everything is on ground level on a bench.
Well, we'll just make the point, sorry Grant, I just want to make the point while we're on it that the RCG is equipment certified as well. So you could combine that with equipment certified luminaires or instrumentation, motors, etc., without further evaluation, because it is equipment certified for use.
You going to say something, Grant?
Yeah, no, I was just going to add to the point there on the, you know, the length of the, if you look at something like the Protector X, you know, certainly when you're coming away from conventional lighting, you know, some of the luminaires you might be replacing, you know, maybe even longer than 4 foot, 5 foot, because it might have a, you know, an external battery enclosure. So regardless, you might have a cable short there. And, you know, we are seeing that. You know, we're working on a number of projects at the moment where we're going to be supplying the fixture coming out of the factory with an RCG in one end, you know, and almost a flying lead with the inline on the other. So it doesn't have to be a sealed for life luminaire that we're talking about. You know, it can be anything. And obviously we've got other products, you know, down the line that are going to come out where this will be an, you know, a selectable option. So I think, you know, that the list of possibilities with it, I'm not going to say it's limitless, but certainly, you know, that added value that doesn't have to be us. You know, we've got a large distribution network around the world, and it gives them the option to, you know, to add value to that product as well. When, you know, when they're supplying that to their customer, they can take some of that work away from, be it the contractor or whoever it is, and saying, look, we can do a lot of that work for you. And obviously add that value to the product. And I think that's something that, I think it's lost sometimes in translation that yes, it's going to end up more expensive than a cable gland, but it's what it saves you when it leaves our factory or leaves distribution. That's where the cost savings are.
Perfect. So you kind of touched upon installation earlier. We have some questions about the installation. So is there anything specific in the installation process that installers need to be aware of?
There is. The first being kind of looking at the product as a whole. I mentioned again at the top, we had an entry and we had a body. The entry houses the pins, the body houses the sockets, and there's two different methods of termination onto the conductors regarding them two halves of the product. So on the pins, which are housed in the entry, you need to have a crimp tool. When you are specifying a body, you need to provide the cross-sectional area of the cable that you're terminating onto. We recommend a 4 or 6 point crimp or a hex crimp. We supply 4-point crimps as standard. They can be purchased from us, or obviously you can use one that you've currently got on site. There's also an insert tool required for the entry portion. This press fits the pins in place, so once you have crimped them, the cable's then fed through the entry and then pushed into place with the insert tool. Again, that needs to be purchased from us. It's specific to the pin. So if you are purchasing one of these, then an insert tool will be needed. We're supplying it as a separate item, purchased as a separate item, purely from the fact that if you want 50, 100, 200 of these products, you don't want the same amount of insert tools because one will do all of them. So it is a separate tool to purchase. So just be aware of that. It also can be used to ensure that the pins are in position. They're not kind of off center. So once you have inserted the pin in place, you can check and you can kind of move it around with the tool. Other tools that are needed are just standard off-the-shelf, bog standard tools that you have in your toolbox: spanners, snips, terminal screwdriver, because the sockets are actually utilize a grub screw design, so that they're obviously grub screwed in place. And that then moves on to kind of thread locker. We recommend that thread locker is used on them screws, on them grub screws for the sockets. We provide a small sachet of that with the product as well. So make sure we use that. Regarding insertion of the actual two halves themselves, the inserts are keyed. So they have specific keyway to ensure you get perfect alignment. Takes any issues away with regards to how it's assembled. It will always assemble in one way when the keyways are aligned and the inserts kind of mesh together. Just going back to the socket contacts, and this is all explained in the AI sheet as well as the assembly video. The position of them is quite important in the actual insert themselves. The grub screw needs to be center of the position that the insert is seated in, and it can't be twisted one way or the other. And also, we must make sure that the sockets are concentric to the pinhole as it's mated. So we have to make sure that obviously they are in line to make sure you get an easy mateable process when you are bringing the body up to the entry. Just want to touch on energizable caps. We have two methods of ordering this product. One is you can order an entry and a body as a separate component, or you can order it as a combo unit where you get both halves together under one part code. Now, if you order it separate, you receive energized caps, because what we expect is that you're either purchasing one half and the other half is going to be purchased at a later date, in which case it may need to be energized. That mating face that's on a run of light fittings, for instance, may get energized, so we can supply energized caps at that point, and that's for both the body and the entry. So you can leave cables with a cap on, and they could be energized potentially. If you do purchase it as a group unit, so where you've got the entry and the body as under one part code, you receive transit caps that maintain IP. We expect them to just get to site, either be installed and plugged straight together, or if they're installed in a warehouse, they'll be shipped to site together to be plugged in. So we're only supplying transit caps at that point. But there is an option to buy energizable caps after the fact if you need them. The just want to touch on again about the assembly process. It's very much like a cable gland. You have to follow a set process. So it's your entry, your body plugs into the entry. You then tighten the center nut, then the middle nut, then the back nut. And again, to undo it, undo the back nut, undo the middle nut, undo the center nut, and the RCG comes apart. So that's kind of the reason for a cable gland style product, just more in the way that it's installed. It's much more familiar to it's very much more similar like a cable gland. I just saw a message or a question that popped up about alternative threads. 476 adapters can be used. So if you do need a larger thread size or a reduced thread size or an alternative thread, then a 476 can be specified. That's not a problem. Other accessories, you can use the GMC with the product. So the Gland mounted clamp that allows you to attach a clamp to and anchor the cable to the product itself. These do fit this product. So they can be purchased for any braided or unarmored type applications. And also on the coupler, we have a flange mounted option. And that's again a separate item that can be purchased if cable laying in a cable tray isn't suitable. They can move that away and they can manufacture something that may be fastened to a piece of unistrut, and they can mount it that way as well. Anything you want to add there, Andy?
Yeah, I was just going to mention on the installation, you need to be aware of where the entry has been installed into the equipment. That you need to maintain the IP ratings of the equipment. So with this in mind, the product is supplied with an IP washer as standard also. But I'll just reiterate that element, again, it's the same as the cable gland, where you need to make the appropriate considerations on maintaining ingress into the enclosure.
Great point.
Perfect. So kind of similar question, but how do I effectively ground the RCG coupler unit?
So I can take that one. So we need to think about the grounding of both the 5.1 RCG, which is screwed into equipment, or the standalone coupler unit. So again, the 5.1 RCG is supplied with an earth tag, which can be used if deemed necessary. The grounding methods are essentially the same as the cable gland. Sometimes you earth tag externally, sometimes you earth tag internally. Sometimes if you've got a thick walled enclosure, you can rely on the threads. So exactly the same thing applies to the RCG. We're supplying these accessories with that product purely to remove as much configurability as possible at the ordering process, to keep this simple for customers when they're actually generating part codes and ordering the product. When it comes to the RCG coupler unit, because that is standalone, it doesn't fix or screw into any other equipment. We have designed in an earth tag to the product, so it does come with an external earth tag as standard, and then you can bring a terminal, a ring terminal and an earth lead to that as you normally would. Alternatively, if it's a flange mounted version of the coupler unit, again, you could bring an earth tag to one of the screw positions, one of the mounting positions, in order to ensure you're maintaining grounding. So there are multiple options there, and different ways of doing it.
One accessory we're not supplying with the product is a serrated washer. You may need it if you've got a stainless steel enclosure. So just to be aware that if you do need a serrated washer, that would have to be purchased separately. We are supplying lock nuts and sealing washers and earth tagged with it, but serrated washers are obviously have to be specified separately.
Perfect. And why is there no selection for conductor size on the RCG coupler?
There's not a requirement for it because the two halves that are terminated to the cable are supplied with grub screw socket inserts. So them grub screws allow for termination from anything from 0.75 to 6 square mil. So there's no need to specify a conductor size on it, but the rating on the product will be determined by the conductor size, and that is directly related to the amperage of the product. There's a series of different amperages as you go up the conductor size, and that's all about heat rise. and that can be seen on the data sheet.
Yeah, I think T ratings is something we haven't touched on yet. So just to expand on that, because the RCG does contain internal pins and sockets, it does have a T rating, because those pins and sockets do generate heat depending on the ampage, as Matt just said. You don't need to specify your T rating at the point of ordering because the product is marked with all of them. So again, that's a point of difference, and to try and take away configurability, we have marked all the T ratings on there. What you have to be aware of is the size of conductor that you want to use and the required ampage that needs to be delivered, just to make sure that that does fall within the approved ratings of the product.
Perfect, okie doke. So along with the ATEX and IECX approval, is there any other approvals that the RCG has?
So it's got ATEX IECX, it's also got UKEX approval. People might not be familiar with that, but that is a new UK only approval which has come in this year, basically because of Brexit. So the UK isn't part of the EU anymore, so we can't use ATEX certification. So we've come up with our own. So it is UKEX approved. Also comes marked with in Metro and EAC as standard. And basically we're seeing them as the core approvals required. We are always interested to hear about any other approvals that people do need. You know, if there's any marine approvals that come up or different parts of the world where you find applications, please contact us, because we are always open to discussing adding further approvals onto the product as applications come up.
So you kind of touched upon the differences between the RCG and the Universal, but they do hold the same black seal and armour clamping system. So why is it not subject to the same special conditions of use?
Okay, so I assume by conditions of use you're talking about the cable clamping requirements. So 51453 Universal does have special conditions on it, which basically state if you're using braided cable, you do need to provide additional clamping because you can't rely on the braid to offer any additional strain relief. These requirements come from the installation standard 60079-14. This is covered in the RCG certificate through the description of the product, and it does talk about the fact that where additional clamping is required, you can fit a Hawke GMC in order to fulfill those requirements that are pulled up in -14. So in a nutshell, that's the reason why those conditions don't exist. My position on it is I would always encourage installers and end users to understand and implement the requirements of -14 to make sure you have got appropriate clamping and correctly strain relief cable, depending on your application.
The difference between cable glands having 9-10 different sizes and the GMC only having, well, featuring for maybe 5 of the sizes, obviously it's not something that we can include on a cable gland special conditions and kind of not scratch it off as such, but mention the GMC within the certificate, whereas the RCG only has 2 or 3 sizes of back end, which the GMC covers. So obviously that was something that we wanted to kind of remove. We've got a solution for that. So give the ability for customers to specify the GMC and essentially give the product an effective clamping arrangement anchored to the actual product itself.
So the next question we have here is, does the coupler have an option to be used with a shroud or other cover?
Fortunately not. Obviously, every effort has gone into ensuring that it maintains IP. The materials of the coupler and the cable gland RCG are standard to what we manufacture and what we issue to all different types of applications. Our position on Shrouds is they don't increase the IP rating. That's done through seals and design and everything else that we obviously look at through the process of development. So from a shroud point of view, we wouldn't recommend it because it essentially holds water inside. You know, our position on shrouds is that they don't bring anything other than an aesthetic look, but also it can hide a myriad of mistakes potentially, as well as on the coupler as well. If you've got an earth tag on there, you know, that has essentially a protruding section where you're earthing from. It doesn't allow for a shroud to be slid over the actual product itself, so there isn't a shroud option available for it.
The other point I would make off the back of that is the RCG products do incorporate our patented tightening guide, and what the tightening guide gives you is the ability to visually inspect the tightness of the batt nut seal, because it has like a gauge of diameter versus batt nut position on the actual product itself. Now, if you're fitting a shroud to any of our cable glands that have this, or any of the RCG products, you are covering up the visual indicator. So what that then means is you're taking away the ability under visual inspection to make sure that the seals are correctly installed and are tight enough. So I always make the point of, how do you visually inspect your cable glands if they've got shrouds on them? Because you're having to touch them and pull the shroud off. So I'll always question that, and also back up the points that Matt's made, where we never recommend the use of a shroud to maintain any sort of ingress protection or protection against environmental conditions.
Okay, okay. So the next question we have is, would I need to add this to the site's EX register, like a connector or a junction box?
That's a good question. It's something that before we launched this product, we did spend time speaking to people about, and ultimately it's down to the site. At the moment, do all sites put connectors on their registers? No, some do, some don't. My position on it would be, you can treat this product like a cable gland, because to meet all the inspection requirements, you're not having to open up the product. We wouldn't ever recommend that you have to decouple, open it and inspect the contacts, because we're in an IP sealed environment. So therefore, in my mind, you can consider it as part of the equipment. If you'll have your junction box on the register, that junction box will then have documentation which informs what the arrangement of that junction box is, what glands it uses, does it use an RCG or not. And for me, that's enough. But I do think ultimately it's down to the site to risk assess and decide what the best thing is for them.
I mean, the RCG isn't serialized either, like a connector is or a JB is or whatever. And we wanted to make it as versatile as possible in the market. So, you know, as Andy's iterated, it is down to site specifics and whether that requirement is there. But if you don't serialize, or if you don't put cable glands on an inspection register, we don't see why you would have to put RCGs on there either.
I mean, you can tell from the marking of the product everything about it. It doesn't need to have a serial number to give you additional information. It's all on there. All you need to know is the size of conductor, which will obviously be in the electrical schematics.
And I think you touched earlier upon the energize. So are these hybrid couplers able to connect or disconnect during the power?
No, so they strictly cannot be disconnected when energized. So again, it comes back to being designed down to a cost versus a connector, which may be live demate, and also the fact that we're seeing these as more of a semi-permanent installation as opposed to quick connect and disconnect in the same way as a connector. So no, do not disconnect when power is on them. They're not designed for that.
That includes removal of caps. Might think it's straightforward, but yeah, do not take the cap off. You have to de-energize before the cap is removed in all instances. So yeah, like Andy said, it's not a live demateable connector. It can't be decoupled while live. And
this is clearly marked on the product as well. So there are walk-in labels marked on the product which do state that.
Perfect. Okay, so we've got some questions in the chat. So one of them is, can adapters and reducers be fitted to the RCG?
Yeah, I think I mentioned that earlier. So alternative threads can be used by use of a 476 adapter. Obviously, we have a full range of them available in various different thread types, thread forms. So yeah, if you need a different thread type, then a 476 adapter will be the go-to product for it. Ensuring that every thread engagement has a sealing washer. Make sure that if you are installing an adapter, you've got 2 sealing washers, one for the thread between the RCG and the adapter, and one between the adapter and the equipment.
Yeah, I would probably reiterate advice that I often give to people is to make sure that wherever possible you do have the correct entry thread in the equipment, because anytime you do add an adapter, it does add other potential leak paths. But as Matt says, you can accommodate and protect against those, and it also extends the length of the product. We've seen Christmas trees of 5 adapters and then a gland going into them, and it ends up being 3 times longer, and it compromises the mechanical strength of the installation by extending the length and creating a lever. So if someone kicks the end of it, it does put a lot more force on the mounting joint.
Okay, so the next question we have is there a key-in to avoid swapping multiple RCGs next to each other as to make a unique connection?
There isn't. So where on a standard style connector you may have different keyways, so you might have 5 potential options. That's what we have on our connector products. Again, these things are designed out to keep costs down, to give plug and play at a cost-effective level. I would recommend that if you have got multiple RCGs, you come up with a different type of method. I've seen racks of connectors that could potentially all connect to one another. We only have 5 positions. If you've got more than five connectors there, they could potentially be cross-mated. And they use a lot of different ways of being able to ensure that they are connected to the right entries, or if you're thinking about plugs and bulkhead receptacles, there is methods of being able to identify which one goes with which. Maybe a color-coded system, piece of colored heat shrink, piece of colored tape, marker pen, anything that there's lots of different ways that I've seen in the field. So yeah, it's a case of ensuring that you do have a system in place to ensure you don't cross-mate. But as Andy mentioned, the product is designed to be, almost a permanent style product where on occasion it will be decoupled for inspection, maintenance, maybe replacement. It's not something that is a quick connect product that is going to supersede or replace a traditional connector. So we don't expect these to be decoupled on a regular basis like you would a connector style product that's obviously been designed to do that. So yeah, there isn't, but there is methods of introducing such an identification to ensure that doesn't happen.
I mean, it all comes back to choosing the appropriate product for your application, because if you've got multiple or a requirement for multiple disconnects and you want them to be separately keyed, you look at one of our connector products, which does give you that capability. And that sort of brings you into things like hot swapping and when you're testing out circuits and you want to put temporary connections in place and things like that. That's what connectors give you. The key message with this product is that it gives you the ability to make installations where previously you would have hardwired glands, but you want to move that labour to lower cost areas, or you want to give yourself the ability to seal your equipment for life and bring the terminals outside the enclosure. So it's very much a complementary product to the connectors, and it's all about choosing the right product for your application.
I think you need to think that it sits bang in the middle of a cable gland and a connector. It's a standalone product that's very much like a cable gland in the way that it's assembled, but offers all of the benefits that a connector does. But it doesn't quite have all the, the bells and whistles and the fancy stuff that you get with that price point. And we wanted to bridge that gap because there is a huge gap between the two, but the uses in the field are massive, and the things that a product like this could bring with regards to all the benefits that it's going to introduce potentially for applications, then yeah, that's kind of the area we went for with the design.
Perfect. And I think the last question we've got in the chat, so we can maybe start to wrap this up, is, are the RCG available with nickel plated?
Yes, they are. They're nickel plated as standard. So there's no specification for material actually in the part code. There is an opportunity to specify stainless steel, but a standard part code will drive a nickel plated product that you will receive. If it is stainless steel, or there is obviously other environmental issues that require stainless steel material, then pick up the phone, give us a call, speak to distribution, and obviously they'll be able to make inquiries regarding that.
Perfect. So if you have anything else to add, I think close up. But
I just want to just cover just one last point. Is, you know, this is not the final range of RCG products. You know, development is continuing on this product range. We are looking at launching other products to complement it, to open up different applications, different certifications, different uses. Increasing entries, things like that. We're looking at a whole raft of different options that we can introduce with this product. So it's not that this is the final article. We are obviously actively developing this product range. So there will be more opportunity to open up. So if the range doesn't fit your application currently, you know, we may be working on something in the background, and any ideas that anybody has, you know, bring them to us. We can look to see whether we can incorporate those designs into the product range with ease, and whether it kind of is synergy with the ideas that we've currently got going through the development team and kind of going through the lab under testing currently. So this isn't the finished thing, or the finished product line. We will be bringing more options to market with this product.
And I think, you know, I'm interested to hear about what applications you think this could be used for, because obviously we've thought about it and we think there is a market for the things that we've talked about on this call, but I think there's a whole raft of other applications that we haven't considered that you guys might come across. So we'll just encourage you to reach out to us if you think you have places where this could add value to you, because we're always interested to hear about that and to discuss it.
perfect. Okay, so thanks everyone for your time and submitting all your questions. If you do have any other questions, just drop us an email and we can get back to you on them. This has been recorded, so you will receive a copy of that, and it will be uploaded onto the Hawke website as well. So yeah, thank you everyone for your time, and we look forward to seeing you on our next webinar, whenever that is.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.